Good afternoon and welcome. You've tuned into the Schenectady County Human Rights Commission MLK Observance. The overall goal of our observance for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is observed as a day on, not a day off. The MLK Day of Service is intended to empower individuals, strengthen our communities, build bridges where there are barriers, create solutions to social problems, and move us closer to the vision and dream of our Dr. King for a beloved community. Without further ado, it is my esteemed privilege and honor to introduce to you today our Lieutenant Governor, Brian Benjamin.
Well, thank you so much to the Schenectady County Human Rights Commission MLK Day Observance for having me. My name is Lieutenant Governor Brian Benjamin. I want to take a moment to share some reflections today as we honor the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But today is more than celebrating the work of one man. Today, we reaffirm our commitment to carrying out his teachings of justice, peace, equality, and love. His impact was and still is immeasurable. He famously observed that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And he himself did as much as any one person could do to bend it. He did so through his words and his actions, which were guided by his deep abiding faith in people, something that was all the more remarkable given a lifetime confronted by injustice. But I know that despite all of the progress Dr. King made, injustices and inequities still exist more than a half century later. Today, we are confronted by our own modern day injustices, Voting Rights Act once again under siege, democracy at perhaps its most fragile point, a nation tragically divided with little hope of uniting behind our shared values. As we celebrate his legacy, it is up to each of us to reward Dr. King's faith in people and do everything in our power to build a better, more just society. You know, Dr. King is most remembered for his I Have a Dream speech. And that is without question one of the most incredible speeches over the course of human history. I think it's also important that we remember him for helping to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Fair Housing Act of 1968. These pieces of legislation changed the course of American history by once and for all outlawing some of the most heinous practices that were occurring against African Americans in this country. And so as we move forward, we must continue to push for voting rights in DC, but we also must continue to push for voting rights in every single state. Here in New York, this year, Governor Kathy Hochul and I are committed to passing a New York State Voting Rights Act to enhance protections against voter suppression and vote dilution, establish new protections against voter intimidation and deception, improve language access for voters, and require boards of elections in jurisdictions with a history of civil rights violations to obtain pre-clearance for changes to election-related policies and practices. It is that activity of not only having the right values, where we are pushing for a more equal and just society where everyone has a seat at the table, but is our continued focus on the right laws, on making sure our budget and all of the powers that we have continue to move New York State and this country to a better place for our country and our future. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Brian Benjamin. My name is Arthur Butler. I'm the Executive Director of the Schenectady County Human Rights Office. And on behalf of our commissioners, our Schenectady County legislators, our county manager, we bid you a good day. The year is 2022. As our Lieutenant Governor said, some 58 years ago, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, which at the time was the most sweeping civil rights legislation since Reconstruction. President Johnson said, "My fellow citizens, we have come to a time of testing. We must not fail. Let us choose the spring of let us close the springs of racial poison. Let us pray for wise and understanding hearts." The Civil Rights Act, expanding voting rights, strengthened equal employment opportunities, and guaranteed all Americans the right to use public facilities. On my wall hangs a sign poster by the late Dr. Professor Derek Bell, who often is called the godfather of critical race theory. On this poster, it depicts Tommie Smith and John Carlos on top the medal podium at the Summer Games in Mexico City. There, Tommie Smith and John Carlos are standing with bowed heads, raised black gloves, their fist in the air during the national anthem. The poster is dedicated to all those who throughout American history have risked its wrath to protest its faults. Courageous Black athletes mounted a famous protest against racism. The protest, like so many men that had preceded them, constituted a prophecy. The dynamic finale of an extraordinary achievement performed for a nation which, had there been a choice, would have chosen others. If given the chance, they would accept the achievement and neglect the achievers. Here, these two men, with a simple gesture, they symbolize a people whose patience with exploitation that will expire with dignity and certainty that which has been endured for too long. I received a call today from my neighbor that told me that she was planning on tuning in and thought to herself, and brought it to my attention, that she found it remarkable that some 58 years later, that instead of being ahead of where we were then, it appears that we are moving backwards. If you would like and take for a moment the use of an analogy, on our cars, our automobiles, on our mirrors, there are those side mirrors. And in the side mirrors, there are words projected on the side mirrors that says that objects may appear closer than they are, telling you that the things that seem close might be of danger, might be in danger, might bring danger to us if we're not careful to keep our eyes on the road. 58 years later, we find that we are going backwards. Eyes still planted firmly on the road, eyes still planted firmly on the dreams of Dr. King, but yet we find in state after state legislation that would unravel the work, the sacrifices, those things that my mother and my father and many of your parents and grandparents worked hard to achieve. It is an honor to go to the ballot and cast a vote, something that I do not take lightly because it was instilled in me the importance of the vote. I still believe, as Dr. King, in the importance of the vote. I still believe in a dream for a better America. I still believe that through collaboration, through partnerships, through the work for the good, that we can make a difference. So we hope that our presentations today, whether through song, speech, video, will help to encourage you, inspire you to move from not just thought, but into action. Together, we can and will make a difference.
It's December 2018. I'm with my fiance in the suburbs of Wisconsin. We're visiting her parents, both of whom are white, which makes her white. That's how it works. I don't make the rules. And we get pulled over by the police. I'm scared. I pull over slowly under the brightest street light I can find in case I need witnesses or dash cam footage. We get out my identification, the car registration, lay it out in the open, roll down the windows. My hands are placed on the steering wheel, all before the officer exits the vehicle. This is how to stay alive. As we wait, I think about these headlines. Police shoot another unarmed Black person. The good news is our officer was friendly. She told us our tags were expired. So to all the white parents out there, if your child is involved with a person whose skin tone is rated Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or darker, you need to get that car inspected, update the paperwork every time we visit. That's just common courtesy. I survived something that should not require survival. And I think about this series of stories. Police shoot another unarmed black person. And that season when those stories popped up everywhere. In 2018, those stories got changed out for a different type of story. Stories like white woman calls cops on black woman waiting for an Uber. White woman calls police on 8-year-old black girl selling water. Woman calls police on black family barbecuing at lake in Oakland. That was the now infamous barbecue Becky. A subject takes an action against the target engaged in some activity. California Safeway calls cops on black woman donating food to the homeless. Golf club twice calls cops on black women for playing too slow. In all these cases, the subject is usually white. The target is usually black, and the activities are anything from sitting in a Starbucks to using the wrong type of barbecue to napping to walking agitated on the way to work, which I just call walking to work. Now, this is the obligatory moment in the presentation where I have to say not everything is about race. Crime is a thing, should be reported, but ask yourself, do we need armed men to show up and resolve this situation? Because when they show up for me, it's different. We know that police officers use force more with black people than with white people. And we are learning the role of 911 calls in this, which forces me and people like me to police ourselves. We maybe pull over to the side of the road under the brightest light we can find so that our murder might be caught cleanly on camera. And we do this because we live in a system in which white people can too easily call on deadly force to ensure their comfort. This is weaponized discomfort, and it is not new. From 1877 to 1950, there were at least 4,400 documented racial terror lynchings of black people in the United States. They had headlines as well. Reverend T.A. Allen was lynched in Hernando, Mississippi for organizing local sharecroppers. Oliver Moore was lynched in Edgecombe County, North Carolina for frightening a white girl. Nathan Bird was lynched near Luling, Texas for refusing to turn his son over to a mob. We need to change the action, whether that action is lynches or calls police. I'm asking people here to see the structure, where the power is in it, and even more importantly, to see the humanity of those of us made targets by this structure. I am tired of carrying this invisible burden of other people's fears, and many of us are, and we shouldn't have to, because we can change this, because we can change the action, which changes the story, which changes the system that allows those stories to happen. Systems are just collective stories we all buy into. When we change them, we write a better reality for us all to be a part of.
Heat up any room in under 2 minutes with this affordable heater.
Thank you. Thank you. It is, as we think on those words of Baratunde Thurston about changing systems and changing thoughts and changing the action, we know that there is the ability for change. In order to change one mind, you first must change your mind. Together we can do that, and our message today is about change, bringing change to a world in need of change, in a world in need of hope. To give a little hope through our blessing, we are going to invite one of our commissioners at the Schenectady County Human Rights Commission and local rabbi to come and bless you this afternoon. With that, I bring Rabbi Spitzer to the podium.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Arthur. And thank you, everybody, for being here and honoring the legacy of Dr. King this afternoon. I want to begin with a hard moment. Yesterday, for the third time in just over 3 years, the peace of the Jewish Shabbat, Sabbath services, was desecrated by an act of violent hate against worshipers inside a synagogue. After a horrifying and harrowing day, I am grateful, and we are all grateful, for the safety of the 4 hostages, including Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker, in yesterday's attack on Congregation Beth Israel in Colleyville, Texas. We pray for Rabbi Citron Walker, for his congregants, for their families as they process this trauma, and for the Jewish community struggling under the weight of fear and insecurity. Synagogues and community spaces must be made safe, and we must continue to work together with partner organizations to ensure that all are able to pray and to gather in peace. Like racism, anti-Semitism has no place in Texas and no place in America. And so we call on our partners and allies to work with us to combat anti-Semitism in all its forms. Hate cannot be cured with more hate. A more whole and more perfect, a more just society can only be brought into being when we can come together in solidarity and community. With that in mind, I'm grateful to have been asked to begin with words of prayer and blessing this afternoon. And so I'd like to quote Dr. King, who said, "But the end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community. It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opposers into friends. It is this type of understanding goodwill that will transform the deep gloom of the old age into the exuberant gladness of the new age. It is this love which will bring about miracles in the hearts of men." I believe that Dr. King was imagining moments like this one, where communities gather together across racial boundaries, across the boundaries of religion, to reconcile old types and hopefully to take steps toward redemption. Our teacher, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who marched with Dr. King, also applied this idea of redemption to the divine God self when he wrote, "God's dream is to be not alone, but to have humanity as a partner in the drama of continuous creation. By whatever we do, by every act we carry out, we either advance or obstruct the drama of redemption." What Rabbi Heschel is reminding us is that our actions, human actions, can both push us toward redemption and move us away from redemption. We have the capacity to both harm and to heal. Rabbi Sharon Brous of Ikar in Los Angeles wrote, "The core story of my faith is a redemption story. The Exodus from Egypt, in Hebrew, Yitziat Mitzrayim, literally emergence from the narrow place. That story forms the theological, ethical, and psychic foundation of the Jewish experience of the world, animating and sustaining our people for thousands of years. And it is embedded in our liturgy and our calendar to such an extreme that it's clear that it's designed to affect everything, from what we eat to how we pray, to our heartache when reading the newspaper each morning. And it stands at the heart of the teachings of both Dr. King and Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel and so many others who fought and continue to fight for liberation and redemption, not as political objectives or philosophical abstractions, but as mandates of their faith and moral imperatives. It is at its heart not a story of oppression and enslavement in Egypt. Only a few verses in the first 2 chapters of Exodus describe the hundreds of years of debasement and dehumanization. It's also not the story of the arrival in the promised land. As the book of Deuteronomy ends, Moses dies on the top of the mountain, looking out at but never actually reaching the land of Canaan. Instead, this story is consumed with the dreaming of, planning for, and walking toward the promised land. It bears testament to the inextinguishable yearning, both human and divine, for freedom. Its focus is on the tedious, protracted, and unfinished process of becoming free from oppression. It is a work in progress. And it endures because the journey from degradation to dignity remains an ongoing struggle. This story at its heart establishes the eternal truth of triumph, of freedom over slavery, dignity over degradation, liberation over systematized oppression. In a world of cruelty and injustice, this story is a testament to the inextinguishable yearning, human and divine, for freedom, for equity and equality, for hope in dark times, for sacred responsibility in times of light and possibility. Harachaman Hatzadik, O God, who is merciful and righteous, we call on you today to bless this gathering, that it may be one step toward the redemption of the world. Amen.
We now play the national anthem that has been presented to us today by the students of SUNY Schenectady and its music department. And after the national anthem is played, we'll go to the national Negro anthem. Thank you again to our students. If you're at home and if you are standing, as we are here in the legislative chambers, we now will present Lift Every Voice and Sing. Thank you again to Dr. Breschlosh and the students from the School of Music at SUNY Schenectady. Thank you to Dr. Steady Muno and the support that we have received from our university and our students. I'm honored to bring our next speaker to the podium, and I have great admiration for this man. Before I bring Legislator Fields to the office, I am reminded as a young man, as I looked at the students at SUNY Schenectady, as a young man just out of college, I ventured to the nation's capital, and I was privileged to work with a group of individuals. One of the individuals that I worked with became the Director of Communications for the United National Urban League. And one of the positions we then worked also was with DC 30 2007, and I was given the task as an intern to work on coordinating the union's participation in the 30th anniversary on the March on Washington. And part of that job, I had assembled over 400 buses from across the United States through our unions and our connections to merge on to the mall at the in Washington, D.C. I remember when, and before the actual event started, standing there as a young man, gazing out, where I know so many great folks had stood, imagining that I was stepping into shoes that I wondered how could I ever fill. Knowing that each achievement that I've achieved in my life, that I am quite honored to know that I stand on the shoulders of those who came before me. I can tell you that it was a moment that was monumental in my life, impacted my life, knew that it set me on a course that my work was to be the best person that I could be, as Dr. King in one of his speeches, or many of his speeches, had encouraged us, that no matter what it is that you do, that no matter what job you hold, be your best, give your best, seek excellence. And with that, I bring to the podium a man who I admire, who is always striving for excellence, excellence in me and my job as the executive director at the Human Rights Commission, as a friend, as a confidant, and as an advisor. And with that, to bring greetings and comments is Philip Fields, our county legislator, and with that, I bring Phil.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Arthur, for those kind words. My name is Philip Fields, and I'm the Deputy Chair of Schenectady County Legislature. And today, on behalf of the County of Schenectady, the Chair of the Legislature, Tony Jadzinski, and my fellow Commissioner and Legislator, Omar McGill, and to all the members within the Legislature, we welcome you to another year of the Schenectady Human Rights Commission Martin Luther King Day celebration. With that, I was very pleased to hear our Lieutenant Governor, who joined us earlier in our program, and thank him for his opening remarks. And what it is, a joy to have a refreshing face in the state of New York, our Lieutenant Governor. And I thank him for the statements he makes in trying to make the state of New York a better place for change and to increase opportunities for us all. And today, I'd also like to give recognition to the students who sang those great songs, as Arthur had just did, and also to our guest speaker, Dr. Cheryl Gooch, the Vice President of Academic Affairs at SUNY Schenectady, and thank her for all her wonderful work that she's been doing on a passionate work on cultural history and many other various teaching programs and classes and students that you've inspired. And again, we want to thank our Rabbi Spitzer for what he had said earlier in his opening prayer. One of the things that we have as author is the Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission. I would like also to recognize many of our commissioners who are joining us on the internet. And we can think of Letitia Kernan, she is our chair, our vice chair, Omar McGill. We have a secretary, Mrs. Rowland. We have Nikita Hardy, Marva Isaacs. Also, as you heard mentioned, Dr. Steady Muno, Dr. Deshaun McGarity, and you heard the opening prayer done by our Mr. Rabbi Spitzer. And also we have Miriam Kajasti, and I would like to thank them all for their work. I think of even Zach Caradon, who has done his fine work here. Today is a day that we are gathered here to remember a man who was a core of the civil rights movement, who wanted all African Americans to have the same inalienable rights that was inscribed in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, equal rights, civil rights, voting rights, racism, injustice, poverty, and basic human rights for all. It was the least that he expected for us African Americans here. And today, as I'm sitting on the heels of the moment of which this was occurred, in my life, it all started before I was born. And I came here, and I've been blessed to see the successes that is going on here in America. And yet, there's these challenges that we face in a new world, in our new government. We're looking forward for even more changes tomorrow. This man, Mr. Martin Luther King, the great doctor, is to be remembered and a national holiday as we're celebrating today. And back then, those days were controversial when he made his movement in trying to make change for us. They were tense, they were difficult, but we're thankful that there were disciplined people. They were resolute, even fearful, knowing the consequences of the nonviolent actions, but they wanted and know that it was the right thing to do, and it had to be done then. And if I can just say, to summarize the words of our Dr. King Jr., he said, "They accepted finite disappointments, but never lost infinite hope." And yes, we are living in a time of very great disappointments. We have COVID. We even have the Voting Rights Act. We have great unrest and distrust, and there are many differences that are occurring today. But we may use this holiday as a way to respond to all that is ongoing around us, to be a people to bring unity, calm, and peace, and wisdom, and understanding, and hope. It is not easy, but by God's help we can achieve such. Just as Dr. Martin Luther King persevered with all his family and companions, and the nation did, for a greater purpose other than himself, let us remember his legacy to guide us to a better tomorrow. I would like also to take this time to recognize one of our own, Congressman Paul Tonko, who has always celebrated the Schenectady Human Rights Commission Martin Luther King Jr. Day with us. He is a great congressman coming all the way from Washington, D.C. to give us a few words of encouragement this afternoon, and I've appreciated him for all of his service he has done over the years. And so without any further ado, I would like to call on Congressman Paul Tonko.
Thank you, Legislator Phil Fields, for your generous introduction. Welcome, everyone. It's a great opportunity to share some thoughts with you, to this audience that is gathered together in the spirit of Martin Luther King to continue his dream and to make certain that we tether that dream in bold and noble actions. It is great to join with so many here today, certainly with our clergy, with Pastor Butler and Rabbi Spitzer. Thank you for your leadership in the faith community and for being with us today. Thank you to Chairman Anthony Jasinski and the members of the Schenectady County Legislature for your leadership in moving forward with programs that, administered by the county, mean a great deal to the people of this tremendous county. To Arthur Butler, who as Executive Director provides great leadership in carrying forth with the mission of the Schenectady County Human Rights Commission, to your Board of Commissioners, and to you, Mr. Director, thank you for the outstanding leadership. I believe it's so essential in these times to continue to advocate for the enhancement, the implementation, and certainly the strengthening of human rights. It is also a great opportunity to join with members of the Schenectady County Community College Music Department. Hooray to you for great performances here this afternoon, a great bit of talent that comes from the halls of the community college. And look forward to hearing the message of Dr. Gooch, who will offer her keynote a little later in the program. So to all, a great opportunity to join with you. When I think of Martin Luther King, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., I think of call to action, a call to action to respond to make our world a better place. We come together today to honor the legend of Dr. King. And certainly there is a rightful call to action, I would suggest that perhaps his messages rendered in that short period of time that he had on this earth resonate more powerfully and boldly today as we as a nation struggling to come forward with great acrimony that divides us. We need to let the message of love and respect and nonviolence reach every heart and every being of this nation, and certainly flow into the atmosphere of our halls of government. The impact that Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. had on our communities and in the hearts of American people simply cannot be overstated. I can tell you that as one who witnessed his walk through so many journeys in his time, that he had a profound effect on me personally. He taught me that it is not only good, but necessary to march and speak to justice. He lived and died working to achieve peace, to achieve justice, and to achieve equality for every human being. His words indeed were very powerful. But what truly makes Dr. King an inspiration is his profound ability to make others see his dream of a better world. Even amidst the darkest of times, he had asked people to see how the world could be despite what it was at that moment. His memory serves as an immortal reminder to all of us of the positive change that we can accomplish if we work together in faith and if we work together in trust. We know this change is not easy. Change never is. Even today, people are fighting the same fight as that of Dr. King for freedom and equality for all. And as President Biden said last week in Atlanta, Georgia, we are at an inflection point for our American democracy. Indeed, our democracy is at stake. The need to enact democracy reform now could not be even more urgent. Republican state lawmakers introduced over 440 voter suppression bills in some 49 states in the 2021 legislative session alone. And at least 19 states have enacted 34 laws that restrict access to the ballot, with, sadly, many more on the way. Experts predict this wave of voter suppression, of suffocation, and election sabotage, akin to a new era of Jim Crow, will intensify in this calendar year of 2022. With partisan gerrymandering underway and the midterms approaching, the imperative to get this done grows greater with each day. Protecting our most basic freedoms should not be partisan in the least. But right now, the Republican minority in the United States Senate is preventing bipartisan policies that have had support from both parties for decades from even being debated. Now, we know the filibuster has been used through the course of time to deny access to equality. Most recently, in October, Senate Republicans blocked the Freedom to Vote Act, a new and comprehensive package of voting, of redistricting, and campaign finance reforms from even being debated. This legislation would expand opportunities to vote, to combat voter suppression and subversion, fight extreme partisan gerrymandering, reform campaign finance for the people, and promote election security. Last week, we took a major step to defend democracy by making certain that we sent the Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Act to the Senate for urgent consideration, with passage being had in the United States House of Representatives. History will remember that when democracy was at risk, not one Republican member supported your right to vote. President Biden was right when he said, this is the moment to decide to defend our elections, to defend our democracy. And I stand with President Biden in our fight to enact H.R. 4, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and the Freedom to Vote Act. I know that together we can get these vital measures passed. if we allow the message of Dr. King to resonate within our being. As Dr. King famously said, bend the arc of moral universe and bend it further toward justice. I thank you for the opportunity to stand with you today. I'm reminded of one of those most often reached to quotes from Dr. King, where he indicated life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? My friends, there is so much unfinished business that could be carried forth for the mantle of justice sake, simply by our involvement. We talk about the opportunities for child tax credit with the Build Back Better legislation. That also includes affordability for child care. The child tax credit would lift 1/2 of our children in this country living in poverty out of that poverty. We need education and higher education reforms for greater access to that sort of opportunity. We need to invest in those communities that are not receiving broadband or are underinvested with broadband, today's modern essential utility. We need to make advancements for environmental justice sake, along with social and economic justice, environmental justice, where communities have been damaged by lack of sensitivity to the environment that they should enjoy. So as we move forward, let us make certain that we allow the message of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to resonate within our beings, so that we go forward with a boldness, a nobleness, and a nonviolent approach to make certain that we allow for truth to conquer, where we can truly continue to build upon our democracy, so that we, the people, in search of a more perfect union, will have achieved in our generation. Thank you so much, and to the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr., let it prevail like never before.
I can change the world with my own 2 hands, make it a better place. With my own 2 hands, make it a kinder place. With my own 2 hands, with my own 2 hands. I can make peace on earth with my own 2 hands. I can clean up the earth with my own 2 hands. I can reach out to you with my own 2 hands. With my own 2 hands. With my own 2 hands. I'm gonna make it a brighter place. With my own 2 hands, I'm gonna make it a safer place. With my own 2 hands, I'm gonna help the human race. With my own 2 hands, with my own 2 hands. With my own 2 hands. I can hold you in my own 2 hands, and I can comfort you with my own 2 hands. But you've got to use your own 2 hands. Use your own 2 hands. Use your own 2 hands. With our own 2 my own two hands.
If you're just tuning in, we want to thank you for tuning in to the Schenectady County Human Rights Commission's Dr. Martin Luther King Day Observance. Our next speaker is building a better place, building a safer place with his own two hands here in Schenectady County. And with that, I give you William Rivas, who is the founder and director at our Coca House here in Schenectady.
Thank you to the Human Rights Commission, our guest speaker, and everyone in attendance. I thank you for this opportunity. As a kid who went to Martin Luther King Jr. School in Schenectady, New York, I remember Mr. Acox, his stern looks and his loving smile. I also remember Mrs. Acox and her warm embrace and her angelic voice singing about in the hallways, in the classrooms. But the thing I remember most about going to Martin Luther King Jr. School was Mrs. Walker, and every year about this time, how she would start to round us up for the Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. For some of us, that meant getting prepared to spend time with Mrs. Acox and the choir. For others, that meant working with teachers and staff to set up in the auditorium. And for a small select few of us, that meant spending every day, every waking moment before and after school with Mrs. Walker, learning the I Have a Dream speech. She had an energy about her that was just amazing. She commanded the room, and she always had our attention. She had a way of speaking purpose into your life, and even as a kid, you may not have really understood what it was that she was trying to get across, but you could tell that she believed in you and she wanted you to do your best. When I think about the youth in my program today, I think of how about it's the utmost importance that we do to protect their innocence. I do not see broken children or broken community. I see resiliency and I see determination. The work that we do with the youth of Schenectady is vital because this investment into our youth is an investment into the future. I see a generation of youth who have access to so many more resources and so much more information due to the internet and social media. I see a generation of youth who are learning it is okay to express themselves, their differences, and all of the things that make them unique. I see a generation of youth who are leap years ahead in the advancement of technology. I see what Dr. King saw, and I see what Ms. Walker was trying to convey. I see the dream, I see opportunity, and them, I see change. The work being done at Cocoa House is a symbol of our evolution as a community. As our community continues to evolve, so must the programs, as to continue to meet the needs required by our people. That is why we transitioned from an after-school tutoring program for 20 years to now what we are, a mentorship model. It is also why we are expanding from one building to two, and a third property as well. We are invested in turning my childhood home into a teen empowerment center, as well as building a community-owned green space. We are invested in partnering with other local organizations to ensure our youth are educated and prepared for the future. The promise of opportunity must be carried out by those of us committed to change and action. Today, I stand as a measure to show the impact of Dr. King's legacy on our society and how we will continue to invest in our most precious resource, our youth. Because of that path that has been laid in front of us and the work done by our elders, we now have a Black woman as president of our city council in Marion Porterfield. We also have a diverse city council that reflects the community in which it serves with Damani Farley and Carl Williams, not to mention newly elected Omar McGill to the county legislature. Our youth have new leadership reflecting who they are and what they represent. The Schenectady Historical Society is putting together a project to document the African American history here in Schenectady through our work and our efforts. We have a growing grassroots population of organizations and community leadership. and I continually am in awe at our collective greatness and look forward to all the ways we will continue to grow as a community and rewrite history. When I think about Dr. King and his work, when I give myself an opportunity to reflect, I look no further than my own community and the monumental changes we have all been a part of. And I think to myself, we may not have changed everything, but I am extremely proud to be a part of this journey. Thank you.
Thank you. It is my honor now to bring our keynote speaker, who didn't hesitate when we called upon her to present to you today a perspective on promise and opportunity, a look into our future based on our history. And with that, I bring to the podium our Dr. Cheryl R. Gooch.
Greetings and thank you, colleagues, for inviting me to contribute to this celebration of the birth, life, and legacy of Dr. King. A consciously historical leader, Dr. King embodied an enduring patriotism, which we can and should embrace, especially in this social political climate. Patriotism and our shared history. In his 1962 speech for the New York Civil War Centennial Commission Emancipation Proclamation Observance, Dr. King said this: "If our nation had done nothing more in its whole history than to create just two documents, its contribution to civilization would be imperishable." Those two documents to which Dr. King referred, the Declaration of Independence and the Emancipation Proclamation. To paraphrase Dr. King, he said this, that the Emancipation Proclamation had four enduring results. First, it gave force to the executive power to change conditions in the national interest on a broad, far-reaching scale. Second, it dealt a devastating blow to the system of slaveholding. Third, the Emancipation Proclamation empowered Black Americans to play a significant role in their own liberation. Fourth, the Emancipation Proclamation, he said, and I quote, "resurrected and restated the principle of equality upon which the founding of the nation rested." A reminder, friends and colleagues, the Emancipation Proclamation of January 1st, 1863, freed enslaved Americans held in states in rebellion against the Union. Thereafter, Black American communities across the country annually celebrated Emancipation Day and continued to do so. So think emancipation as we continue this conversation. Prove our love of liberty and that we be men, according to Frederick Douglass, that dynamic abolitionist and former state of New York resident, had declared that the Emancipation Proclamation received or allowed the reception of Black men into the armed services of the United States. So then Black soldiers could free and fight for the United States Army. In May of 1863, the War Department, as a result of the Emancipation Proclamation, issued an order establishing the Bureau of Colored Troops to recruit and train Black soldiers who became known as United States Colored Troops, or USCTs. And ultimately, more than 200,000 Black men fought for the Union to reunify our beloved country and liberate 4 million Americans from slavery, including hundreds of my ancestors. These 200,000 men became agents of emancipation. Think, agents of emancipation. So abolitionist Frederick Douglass, who lobbied for the enlistment of Black men, was a key inspiration to these men. Prove our love of liberty and that we be men, he said. Your place is in the Union Army. Remember that the musket, the United States musket with its bayonet of steel, is better than all mere parchment, guarantees liberty. In your hands, that musket means liberty, and should your constitutional rights at the end of the war be denied, which in the nature of things it cannot be, your brethren are safe while you have a constitution which proclaims your right to keep and bear arms. So our favorite abolitionist, Frederick Douglass, is telling these men at that time that your combat roles will transform you into agents of emancipation. In June of 1865, when federal troops arrived in Texas to free those who remained enslaved, United States colored troops, established 2 years earlier by the Emancipation Proclamation, were among the liberating army forces. Think emancipation and Juneteenth. Let's emphasize the importance of the Emancipation Proclamation to what we now herald and celebrate as Juneteenth. At least 4,000 patriots, Black patriots from New York, formed 3 regiments: the 20th Infantry, the 26th Infantry, which trained at Rikers Island, and the 31st Infantry, which trained at Hart Island outside of New York City. To the right is the regimental flag of the 26th, and on the left is the regimental flag of the 31st. So some of your ancestors, friends, may have served in these units. Black New Yorkers, Black men, also enlisted in the 54th Massachusetts, made famous by the film Glory, which many of you have seen and still enjoy. Black New Yorkers also enlisted in the 5th Massachusetts Cavalry, as well as the 29th Colored Infantry. So what were these more than 4,000 New York patriots thinking? The Emancipation Proclamation, which was primarily a war measure, motivated these men into action. And we have an example from Medal of Honor Christian Fleetwood, who said, "A double purpose induced me and most others to enlist, to assist in abolishing slavery, and to save the country from ruin." Those men from New York, like Fleetwood, fought to break the brutal chain of slavery, reunify our beloved country under one flag, and attain equal rights of citizenship for themselves and Black people. Patriotism, our shared history. We often think of the surrender of General Robert E. Lee at Appomattox on April 9, 1865. We are familiar with at least two of these three images here. General Robert E. Lee, Ulysses S. Grant, otherwise known as Unconditional Surrender Grant. And to the left, you see a known USCT soldier, because what we're now beginning to appreciate based on research and expanded interpretation is that there were more than 5,000 United States colored troops at Appomattox. In fact, were part of the Union forces that chased Robert E. Lee's army down and prohibited it from escaping or retreating, thus bringing about their surrender. I think you'll find it interesting as well. The left side photograph is in fact a historical photograph from Appomattox at that time, and to the right is a more contemporary, of course, image of USCT reenactors. But I think you'll find it interesting that our New York 31st Regiment was there. How about that? Perhaps some of your ancestors were among these often overlooked agents of emancipation. And I actually encourage you to go to the National Park Service site. You can Google it, USCTs at Appomattox, which will give you this history of the more than 5,000 USCTs who were present there, their role in precipitating that surrender, and you can search by name and regiment. There was a second major surrender during the month of April of 1865. It occurred at Bennett Place or Bennett Farm in Durham, North Carolina, which is now a state-operated historic site and museum. It was, in fact, my friends, the largest surrender of a major Confederate army in the Civil War, when General Joseph Johnston surrendered to William Tecumseh Sherman. We hear less about this significant surrender, mostly because it was eclipsed by the coverage of President Abraham Lincoln's assassination, which occurred on April 15th of 1865. But nonetheless, it is significant for our awareness of the role, here again, of United States colored troops and, in effect, ending the war on that day. There were 9 United States colored troop regiments, including this gentleman, Ephraim Slaughter's 39th Regiment, who helped to secure a decisive Union victory and, again, in effect, ending the Civil War. Slaughter, who was enslaved in North Carolina, escaped and joined the Army. And this patriot said, quote, "I escaped slavery and served God, country, and mankind." Okay? These are some expanded views of patriotism. By the way, Mr. Slaughter, who witnessed the rebel surrender, moved on to and settled in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where he lived until the age of 95, dying in 1946. And at that time, he was the city's last surviving Civil War soldier or veteran, and is memorialized there at the National Civil War Museum in Harrisburg. Still at Bennett Place, there's a lot of our shared history in these two images. Take a look at this. On the left-hand side is an image from the North Carolina State Archives of Confederate veterans at Bennett Farm, long before it was a designated historic site, who would make annual pilgrimages there to celebrate their lost cause, their fight in support of secession, and to celebrate or recall their surrender there in April 6 of 1865. Well, today there is a beautiful museum there that mentions nothing of the USCT presence. However, I had occasion to visit this site a couple of years ago, and I noticed a number of the visitors taking photographs in front of or next to this beautifully restored replica of the 51st Confederate States Army Regiment. And I said, wow, that's interesting. I'll also take a picture and stand in that history. And that's what I'm doing. I am standing there in our shared history. Because colleagues, friends, that decisive Union victory, that decisive United States Army victory, ensured the definitive liberation of hundreds of my ancestors who lived in nearby Granville County, just 30 miles from that site. Our shared history, our varied views of patriotism. This Confederate monument was erected in Oxford, North Carolina, the hometown of both my paternal and maternal ancestors. And it was quietly removed in 2020 amidst the monument conversations and debates. And the gentleman standing there to the right is Silas Gooch, who was more than 100 years old when that photograph was taken. He was my great-great-great-grandfather who was born into slavery, and here again, a direct beneficiary of the Confederate defeat at Bennett Place. I often refer to this juxtaposition of images as symbol of defeat and face of victory, our shared history. I hope that you will take time to better acquaint yourselves with the efforts of really all of the regiments from New York who served to reunify our country. And in particular, you can visit cemeteries. Sometimes they are church cemeteries, sometimes they're national cemeteries, but you should recognize that image on the lower right. That is a medallion from the Grand Army of the Republic, GAR, 1861-1865. Whenever you see that medallion, that will indicate that there is a Union veteran buried there. And it's often those grave sites that are still visible often are decorated with both that medallion as well as the American flag. Remember that emancipation occurred at various times throughout the war, and United States colored troops were part of those liberating forces. Slavery did not end in the United States upon the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863. Slavery in the United States, my friends, did not end on June 19, 1865 in Galveston, Texas. Slavery in the United States formally ended on December 18, 1865, upon the ratification of the 13th Amendment. On December 18, 1865, the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was certified by Secretary of State William Seward, esteemed 1820 graduate of Schenectady's Union College. So moving forward, let's understand and teach the relationship between the Emancipation Proclamation, Juneteenth, and the 13th Amendment. In closing, the next two final images capture Civil War veterans' expressions of loyalty to a unified United States and their desire that generations of Americans, including us, will uphold that unity, shared patriotism. This is one of my favorite images. It is of a post of the Grand Army of the Republic near Syracuse, taken around 1900. You can see there's a lot of shared history in that photograph. It's integrated. And one of the songs of the GAR is called "We Saved This Great Union for You." Now, I am not a singer, but I can recite some of that. It says, "We're old, weary soldiers. Our battles are over. Our footsteps are feeble, and we're nearing the shore. We're slowly and surely approaching the crossing. A little while longer, and all will be over. When my comrades and I pass through the dark valley, will you be faithful? Will you remain true? When the graves mark the spots where the soldiers are resting, remember, we saved this great union for you." And finally, this is an image from the Library of Congress of Black Grand Army of the Republic members parading in New York City on May 30th, 1912, that era during which racial segregation was government sanctioned. Yet there they are, marching, exhibiting, expressing their patriotism. So let us, like Dr. King, remember these views of patriotism. The more than 200,000 United States colored troops, including 4,000 from New York, who sacrificed to secure our civil rights while reforming our democracy. This patriotism is our shared history. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we have our last word, we'd like to bring for final reflections and the benediction our Pastor Butler to the podium. And after that, I will come back and give my final remarks. And then we have one last item of business after that. With that, I'll bring our Pastor Butler.
Truly, we're grateful to God for this day. I'd like to start out by just thanking Arthur for this opportunity. And I thank you, Arthur, for putting together such a wonderful panel, such an empowering panel. I thank you for that. As I sit here, I listened to all that was said by the panel, and the thing I take away from it is that it's a call to action. It's time to make a change. It's hope. I can appreciate what was said And Arthur, I tell you, if nothing else, your goal has been met today. The goal of recognizing this as a day on, I truly believe has been met today. A goal of empowering those who are watching. I hope you can feel what I feel here, and that is a sense that, you know what, things will get better in time. I thank you for this opportunity to be here on today. Truly, I do. I just want to give the benediction, if I may. Most gracious and all-wise God, in whom we live and die, we thank thee for all the good and gracious gifts of life and for health, for food and clothes. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing us to be able to give you glory on this day. We come before you painfully aware of our inadequacies and shortcomings. We recognize that we stand surrounded with your love as we deliberately dwell in the valley of hate. We stand amid the forces of truth and deliberately lie. We are forever offered the high road, yet we choose to take the low road. Lord, help us reach the high road. For the sins, O God, forgive us. Let us break the spell that which blinds our minds. Purify our hearts that we may see all your glory. O Lord, in the days of uncertainties where fear and doubt are all at an all-time high, penetrate our eyes that we may see you and feel the power of your endurance. Help us work with renewed hearts and minds. Let us recognize the work that our brother has started. Give us the ability to continue that work. Lord, let there be peace and love throughout. Lord, give us the wisdom to know right from wrong. Forgive us for our sins, Lord. We thank you for your son, Jesus, who paid the price for us. We thank you for the blood that he shed so that we may be here today. Lord, continue to look over your people. Continue to allow your Holy Spirit to teach them, guide them, and never let them go. Let us not forget the work that our brother did way back when. Lord, let us honor him always in prayer and in jest. This I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
So thank you for coming out and enjoying with us over the internet. We are reminded that in this changing world, that as things continue to change, that we change, but there's a line in a book that I read that says that when change comes, that we should remain steadfast, unmovable, and always abounding in that which is right. I come from a large family, but I come from a place where I had a mother that taught us how to take what's given, not to give up, not to settle, to do your best, to keep moving towards the mark of a higher calling, to keep going. When you get knocked down, she would say, get back up. And so my words to you is, though it may appear that the object in the mirror is closer than we are, or that it appears to be, but don't give up, as our Congressman Tonko advised us. Don't give up, as our William Rivas told us. Don't give up, as our County Legislator Field told us. Don't give up, as our Dr. Gooch told us. Invest in your future. Invest in yourself. Keep on pressing towards the mark. Keep on reaching for those higher heights. When they change the voting place, make sure that you know where it's at and you go and you register where you need to register. Vote in every election, whether it's city, county, state, or federal. Vote because our lives depend upon it. Vote because those who came before us fought hard for us to have the right to vote. Don't take it lightly. This is the moment of our lives. So the question to you is, what will you do with your life? Good decisions will equal good life. Bad decisions will equal a bad life. And with that, our last word for this afternoon goes to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
Questions. What is in your life's blueprint. Number one in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. You're going to be deciding as the days and the years unfold what you will do in life, what your life's work will be. Doors are opening to each of you. Doors of opportunity are opening to each of you that were not open to your mothers and to your fathers. And the great challenge facing you is to be ready to study hard, to burn the midnight oil. I would say to you, don't drop out of school, and I understand all of the sociological reasons why we often drop out of school. But I urge you, in spite of your economic plight, in spite of the situation that you are forced to live so often with intolerable conditions, don't allow anybody to pull you so low as to make you hate them. Don't allow anybody to cause you to lose your self-respect to the point that you do not struggle for justice. And we must not give ourselves to those things which will not solve our problems. Well, life for none of us has been a crystal stair. We must keep moving. We must keep going. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving.